Greetings, YouTube. A couple days ago, I did a video responding to what I consider to be uh, some reasonable and some unreasonable requests from quite a few members of the community addressed directly to Kabam on the forums about their wishes for more transparency and changes to how the game is structured, even as far as how offers are released. Now, the offers thing was never realistic, and Kabam has since shown, as evidenced today by the Platinum Pool slash Gold Pool offers, that they're going to continue their same offer schedule unchanged. But I mainly focused on how Kabam Mike's wording of his message was so passive aggressive and really the opposite of what people should do when they're trying to diffuse a situation in a public relations position, that it was quite appalling. I even had people who would message me saying, Prof, I think you should have been more clear that as somebody who is in an abusive relationship or even an abusive marriage, some of those tactics used by him were actually what abusers use with their victims, which was quite an intense thing to say, but also they weren't completely wrong. All of that is to say, it's been a crazy week on the forums. And I see two extremes that I still am really concerned about on these forum posts. You have some people on one side that any criticism of Kabam whatsoever is just hating. It doesn't matter how honest the post is. It doesn't matter how reasonable the post is. It doesn't matter if it lacks profanity or if it's respectful. It's just, if you're complaining, you're a hater and you're not thankful that the game exists, and you should shut up. And there's a bunch of posts on this last day from the forums that go back and forth between the haters and the loyalists, as people say. But the other thing that really bothers me is the opposite extreme, which is people who are so passionately furious about the game being broken that they're making incredibly unreasonable and dangerous comments toward Kabam Mike, toward Kabam as a whole, saying things that, quite frankly, if you said them to somebody's face in real life, you could be arrested. That is very concerning to me, too. I know there's always going to be people who, if my name is brought up and my channel is brought up, they just laugh at it and dismiss it. It sucks that that's the case, but I've had to come to terms with it, especially on the forums, on Reddit, etc. And it's always interesting to me when people compare to me they say I'm like the Fox News of MCOC, because believe it or not, I don't care what you feel toward Fox News. Fox News is the number one rated cable network in America by far in terms of news. And so comparing me to Fox is fake news because I'm not that popular. So just consider it a weird compliment when you think it's an insult. And it's also unrealistic because, again, not number one, not even close. Never will be, and that's okay. But Kabam Mike did receive a lot of feedback, and a lot of it was pretty critical. And again, I don't encourage people to go overboard and to be threatening and to be really just uncalled for hateful. It's so sad to me. And speaking of politics, I mean, you can see this on both sides of the political spectrum. I teach journalism, and I spend at least 10 to 15 minutes of one of my main senior classes just showing all of the main political websites of the day and talking about how they're trying to get their reader base, their fan base, riled up against their person. Like, people don't log on to Twitter so that they can hug someone. They log on to Twitter so they can get their pitchfork out and say, who are we mad at today? Who are we canceling today? Who are we trying to come after today? Because in the brain, there's a literal dopamine addiction to outrage and to entitlement and to self-righteousness that is on par with opening a 6-star crystal in MCFC. It's the same kind of fix. And people don't like to talk about that. But that's why internet forums, YouTube comments, Reddit threads, you name it, can be incredibly hostile, because people actually get an excited release in their brain from typing those comments. It's like a high. It's a drug. So Kabam Mike, in responding to all the drugged-like comments, says, hey, everybody, I'm seeing that what I said yesterday was seen as insensitive by some members of the community, and it was never my intention to try and sound as if we're not taking this seriously or that we are somehow the victims here. And I could go back and talk about why exactly people claimed that Kabam Mike was making him sound like a victim whenever you say, no one's more affected than us, Well, that is you basically saying that we are receiving the blunt of the feedback. I did meet Kabam Mike once, and I was shocked by how chill and normal of a dude he was. Like, I don't know about you, but when you see the name Kabam Mike and you see like an Apocalypse profile pic, it's almost like you imagine someone from like the book 1984 who's behind a screen just like maniacally laughing. That's not how it is. He's a human being, and he was pretty chill. And I don't know if you know he knew who I was, and my channel was very small compared to what it was back then, and so he might have a very different response to me now. Who knows? But it's important to remember that everybody behind these forum posts, even if the posts are misguided and dare we say misdirected, they're still human beings. And so it's important to keep that in mind, especially when it becomes very toxic in the comment section. What I wanted to convey is that there are reasons that we have not been able to give you more information or a timeline, and that we're on the same page. Now, Kabam Mike, if you're watching this, and you probably aren't, but what I would say to that is, okay, great, then just say that, right? You don't have to dress up a comment. When you're addressing the community, just say, thank you for your feedback. We are not able to give you more information on our timeline. I promise we're working as hard as ever on this. We do not want the game to be broken any more than you do. That's all you have to say, right? That way, you're acknowledging the pain, but you're also not making it personal. And I get that a lot of people are personally coming after you, and that sucks. And I can't imagine what that's like from this perspective. But you can't stoop down to somebody's level and then go after them, because that's where, if you're turning on your customer base, the customer base will turn on you, and that's where it gets really ugly. Any post we write can be taken in many different ways, and that's because verbal communication contains nuance in the inflection that is lost in written communication. Well, that's not exactly true. Some of the posts that you've used have certain adjectives and verbs that are just emotionally charged and make it easier to interpret your comments as critical or victimized based off of the words you choose. It's not the lack of tone, it is the verb and adjective choice, especially when you put them by certain nouns. Trust me, I teach this for a living. I did not mean to sound dismissive or rude about any of this, nor do I in the posts we make every day, and I'm sorry that the words I used left any of that up to interpretation. So it's kind of an apology. I mean, it's better than some of his apologies. It's not I'm sorry you feel that way. Anytime somebody, my mom used to do that all the time growing up. Anytime somebody says, I apologize for you feeling something, that's actually negating your feelings, and it's the opposite of an apology. But this is slightly better. It's not textbook perfection, but it's slightly better. This thread is completely off the rails, though, and I'm going to close it down. We're going to be working on more communications regarding the current issues that you can expect in the next week or two. We still don't have any timeline for a fix, but I want to explain what the issue is, where it came from, and why it's so difficult to address. So, this is an improvement from the past posts, and I think that's a good thing. There still are some things I could nitpick that make it not as ideal as it could be, but I think the bigger takeaway from this video is that whether you are an extreme Kabam loyalist who thinks it's unfair to be critical of anything and just be thankful the game exists, to people who their happiness every day comes from just yelling nasty things at people online, both sides can learn to try to find a common middle ground. I'm not saying everybody's going to be happy. It's just like compensation. Somebody's always going to be miserable. But I do think that a reasonable debate and discourse, which I get is pretty unrealistic on the internet, but I'm going to try, involves some concessions from both sides. And I think Kabam Mike kind of does that here. But even so, he's got to realize going forward that sometimes less is more. And you don't have to make a long personal rant to get a point across. You can just say, thank you for your feedback. We're looking into it, and we hope that the game is fixed as soon as possible, just like you do. When they said that they thought the game was fixed the last two times, it turned out not to be, I really do think they were being genuine, and they thought it would be. It's just it wasn't. And I get that now, after doing this for years, sometimes Kabam's really not sure how something's going to play out on a server until it's live. And you see all sorts of things that aren't working as intended when that happens. I think the majority of the people in this community are good people, are not on either side of the extreme spectrum. They just want a working game that they can enjoy, because the reason why we've stayed with this for years is not just because we have Marvel Casino of Champions Crystal Addiction or Arena Addiction, of which I probably have both, but it's also because of the community, of the friends we've made, of the wins that we have received and earned, whether that's in crystals or rank ups or fights. All of this is why we play the game. And that's important to remember because, God willing, knock on wood, the game will be fixed again. And in the meantime, hopefully Kabam continues to be transparent about things. And as I said last night in a video, probably needs to bring back some of that Alliance Quest compensation. Alliance Quest was more broken in the past week for so many people than it ever has been before. But we also need to continue to be patient as a community and truly believe, despite the extreme out there, that Kabam's not doing this intentionally to hurt us. It actually does not benefit their bottom line to keep their game broken. They will lose more people in the long run and have less sales if they keep the game broken than if they try to fix it. So there you have it. I know this is a longer video than normal, but there was a lot to say on this issue, and I still felt like I could speak for another 15 minutes on it. But we're going to end it here. Thanks for the feedback. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have a good one.